How does an entire colony just vanish into thin air? Let's dive into the real history to uncover 5 theories that attempt to uncover the creepy mystery. The history of Roanoke. The Roanoke colony was established on Roanoke Island off the coast of North Carolina in 1585. We all have heard of the Lost Colony, either from history class, movies, or the current season of American Horror Story that has put a terrifying paranormal twist on the topic. Regardless where you have heard it from, there's a good chance you haven't heard the full history, like how there were 2 previous groups left in the area before the lost colonists arrived, and they both vanished. It all started in 1583 when Sir Humphrey Gilbert financed the expedition to the New World. Sadly for him, he wouldn't be able to finish his plans as he drowned in 1583. As a result of his untimely death, Queen Elizabeth I granted Gilbert's half-brother, Sir Walter Raleigh, the chance to build a colony in North America. But there was an urgency in the offer. Raleigh would have to set sail soon or he would lose his right to colonization. During the first exploration in August 1585, an emphasis was placed on discovering what the land had to offer and reporting on neighboring Native American tribes. Right off the bat, things went south. Tensions rose when the settlers accused a nearby village of stealing from them. The hostility came to a head when the settlers ravaged the village in supposed retaliation for the alleged stealing. Regardless of the current situation, it was decided the men would stay behind to create a colony on Roanoke Island, left to fend for themselves until ships would return in April 1586. But as you can guess, the agreed upon date came and went without a sign of English ships. A few months later, the tension with the neighboring tribe again resulted in violence. This time, the Native Americans conducted an attack on the settlers' fort. Soon after the attack, a ship traveling from the Caribbean stopped by the colony and offered to return some of the settlers to England. The original relief fleet finally arrived, only to find the fort completely abandoned. A few men were then left behind to secure the colony, but the fate of the original settlers was uncertain. It's particularly eerie considering what's to come. In 1587, Raleigh sent a new group of 115 colonists, including women and children, led by John White, to settle in Roanoke Island. When they arrived, none of the men left behind the year before were to be found. The only sign of life, or that there had been life there at one time, was the skeletal remains of one English man. Obviously not liking the scene they found, especially considering the unknown fate of the first group, the new settlers wanted to return to England, but the fleet's commander, Simon Fernandez, refused to allow anyone to leave, demanding they establish the colony like intended. After a colonist was killed by a Native American, White set out to return to England for supplies and reinforcement. He promised to return shortly, but when he arrived back to England, the Anglo-Spanish War broke out and every ship was ordered to join the fight, leaving White stranded. The next spring, White was able to get 2 ships to travel back to Roanoke. But once again, misfortune struck as the captains of the ships tried to capture several Spanish vessels. Instead of them gaining riches, the Spanish thwarted their attack and instead took their entire cargo, forcing the 2 ships to return to England. White wouldn't get another chance to return until August 1590. When he finally arrived to the colony 3 years late, he was met with a completely barren settlement. Not a single trace of a living soul was found. In fact, the entire colony had been stripped, proving the colonists must not have been in a rush to leave the fort. The only thing they left behind was the word Croatoan carved into a fence post. The theories on Roanoke. Number 5. They moved to a hidden location. An old map may contain a vital clue as to what happened to the lost colonists. Upon close inspection, the map has 2 patches pasted over the original piece of paper, leading Brent Lane of the First Colony Foundation to speculate there might be something hiding underneath. And he was right. The British Museum took up the delicate job of trying to find out what's underneath the patches, putting it on a light box, scientists found a faint red and blue symbol written on the original sheet of paper. Hypothesizing the meaning behind the secretive symbol, it's theorized the original exploration was intended to be a secret mission, so the map edit was done intentionally to prevent some important information from falling into public hands. Of course, they still aren't sure what the symbol actually means and why they didn't want anyone else knowing about it in the first place. Perhaps it was a rendezvous point of some sort, maybe for if things in the area went sour, colonists could escape to there for safety. Surrounded by questions, archaeologists are currently examining the modern-day area of where the symbol was located. But with centuries having passed, wood structures would have collapsed and the dirt might have migrated. There's a good chance the area is now buried, waiting to be discovered. Number 4, they were killed. From the beginning, rumors have swirled that the colonists met a violent end. These rumors aren't exactly baseless either, as tensions in the area were running high between the inhabitants. When Roanoke was established, neighboring Native American tribes were in the midst of establishing the Powhatan Confederacy, led by Chief Powhatan. But not everyone wanted to join the Confederation. When Jamestown was established 17 years after the colonists disappeared, one of their reported tasks was to investigate what happened in an attempt to uncover the truth. Jamestown leader John Smith spoke to Chief Powhatan, who freely declared that he was responsible for many of their deaths. Apparently, something caused the Roanoke colonists to abandon their home, and many of them took up residence with the Chesapeakeans. Chief Powhatan claimed he had the colonists killed with the tribe because of their refusal to join him, and because it was prophesied that they would lead the destruction of his confederation. While no bodies were found, even though he said the violence took place when the Jamestown settlers arrived, to back his shocking claims, he was able to show Smith English tools made from iron, which he had said he took from the colonists. It was enough to convince King James of the lost colony's fate. Number 3, they died from illness. One of the most popular and prevalent theories is that the colonists all met their demise from disease and starvation. After Raleigh left, the colonists were left to fend for themselves. In a true deed of misfortune, the colonists arrived at the worst possible time. The period of time Raleigh was gone was the driest 3-year period in 800 years. The drought was so bad, it impacted the entire southeastern United States and was particularly harsh near Roanoke Island. Without rain, the colonists were unable to grow their own crops, and with no supplies coming in from England because of the outbreak of the Anglo-Spanish War, the colonists were left helpless. This theory says most settlers died from starvation, and those that did manage to stay alive didn't live for much longer, as they were exposed to diseases new to them. Already in a weakened state, the last few colonists weren't able to fight off the foreign microbes. While this is an incredibly plausible explanation, it does have a huge flaw. If everyone died, where did their bodies go? Number 2, they integrated into a tribe. What if the colonists didn't just disappear, and instead simply moved away with a nearby Native American tribe? This next theory proposes just that. Without the ability to grow crops, and since no supplies were coming in, it's reasonable to think the colonists decided to take matters into their own hands, rather than just sitting around waiting to succumb to their hunger, seeing as the entire area was impacted by a drought. Some of the colonists decided to join the Roanoke, as they had a good relationship with the people and could work together to survive. Apparently, there's a lot of evidence to support this theory. The first piece of evidence comes from the Zuniga map created in 1607 by Jamestown settler Francis Nelson, which described a group of English-clothed men living in an Iroquois site that claimed to have come from Roanoke. Another supporting piece came a few years later in 1612 when a secretary of Jamestown, William Strachey, wrote of finding 2-story houses built from stone, a unique sight in America at that time. The Native Americans claimed to have learned the building technique from Roanoke settlers. A third piece of evidence came a few decades later after the colonists had disappeared, when other European colonists began to report sightings of Native Americans with great eyes who claimed to have been descendants of the lost colonists. Even official French reports from 1696 that detailed meeting Tuscaroras along the Tar River that had blue eyes and light hair, traits not seen before in Native Americans. As they hadn't interacted with the nearby Jamestown settlement, the source of the genes were most likely from Roanoke colonists. The fourth piece of evidence came in the late 1800s in North Carolina, where a group of Native Americans who claimed to be descendants. To support the theory, they were found to have many Old English words in their vocabulary and had the same last names as some of the documented Roanoke colonists. From the repeated instances of claimed Roanoke descendants throughout the centuries, it would appear the colony split up and integrated into different neighboring tribes. Number 1, they parted ways. Historians have been so focused on trying to find out the fate of the lost colonists, but what if there was more than one answer? This theory suspects no one theory is right because they all are partially correct in some way. Most researchers are in agreement that something happened to cause the colonists to leave Roanoke, whether it had been disease or conflict, or perhaps both. Pointing out how large the group must have been, it is highly probable they split up into groups in order to survive, a tactic that was taught to the previous exploration group. Looking at the integration theory and the evidence of multiple tribes being descendants, researchers point out the surviving colonists would have outnumbered many neighboring tribes at the time, so they would have been forced to separate in order to join whoever would accept them. Some groups may have successfully relocated, while others may not have been so lucky and met their deaths from various causes. Taking the most realistic aspects from the strongest supported theories, the lost colonists most likely weren't lost at all. They just didn't say where they were heading. Trying to find a dispersed group of people in unexplored territory is like trying to find a needle in a gigantic haystack. It just wasn't meant to be. What do you think really happened to the inhabitants of Roanoke? If you dig this video, please give it a big thumbs up so that I know you want to see more theories covered in the future. Please hit that subscribe button and please turn on the channel notifications so that you will be alerted when the next video goes live. Until next time, keep up the radness and I'll see you real soon. Bye!